So it was Shavuos, 1995, 1996. My unit, which was made up about half guys from Yeshivat Har Eival, was stationed in Shechem. And we had the responsibility for spending the next 48 hours, it was 2-day yontif that year, observing Kever Yosef. That was a few years after the implementation of Oslo, and they had agreed to allow a number of Jews to spend the entire Yom Tov at Kever Yosef, and they wanted, knowing that they wouldn't necessarily respond if there was a minor something, whatever, using a telephone, they wanted to have a clear view of everything that was going on, and we were sent to observe the area on a tatzpit. We were stationed on Har Grizim, and we were there for 48 hours. So some of the ideas that I'm going to share with you now actually started then. In this week's Parashat, we read about the commandment of performing a ceremony when they arrive in Eretz Israel. It actually says, B'yom overchem Yarden. Chazal, actually, some of them took it seriously, literally, that it was going to have to be the first day upon crossing the Yarden. They were supposed to perform a ceremony. The ceremony has two elements. One is an altar, Korbanot, at Har Eival with matzevot also. Matzevot with the writing of the Torah, or part of the Torah. And a performance of 6 Shvatim on Har Grizim, 6 Shvatim on Har Eival, and the proclaiming of the brachot and the klalot, which at first glance, both where it appears in our parsha and where it appears in the fulfillment of the event in Sefer Yehoshua, it seems to be one event. And this is the way most Mefarshim and most people understand it. However, something happened in April 1980, at Professor Adam Zertal, of Haifa University, was doing a survey of all the region of Menashe, including Har Grizim, Har Eival, the area of Shechem, and he discovered on the northeastern side of Har Eival a site which he identified, later excavated in 1982 and onwards, as the Mizbeach of the event of Sefer Yehoshua. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details of that right now, but if that is the site, it's quite problematic in understanding how it could be integrated. The understanding, I guess, the classic understanding is the Mizbeach was between the two mountains. Well, Adam Zertal went on to actually suggest that Har Kabir, which is actually opposite Har Eival to the east, is actually the original Har Grizim, but that's difficult to accept. But there could be another possibility, which I'm going to suggest right now, and that is that if you look carefully at the psukim that appear both in Tavo and also that appear in Sefer Yehoshua, there's a distinction between two separate elements. One, the Mizbeach and the matzevot at Har Eival, exclusively Har Eival, and the korbanot and the klalot and brachot, which are Har Grizim and Har Eival, which could have been something that were at least the two separate entities. One, let's say the Mizbeach, upon entry, as soon as possible upon entry, going through actually Nachal Tirza, and not necessarily through after the conquest of Yericho and Ai and so on. And as it says in Sefer Yehoshua, Az is sometimes an indication that the chronology is somewhat not in the original order, which would mean is that the events were two separate events. One, a Mizbeach having to do with crossing the Yarden, thanking Hashem for crossing the Yarden, and two, an event of standing on Har Grizim and Har Eival and having basically a reacceptance or a new type of a completion of the acceptance of the covenant, the brit with Kodesh Baruch Hu at Har Grizim and Har Eival is somewhat of a completion of Har Sinai. Now, why would this be put together as one event in Sefer Yoshua? And that seems to be that the Sefer Yoshua's intent is to show how the completion of Har Sinai was actually a mere event. Namely, at Har Sinai you had the matzevot, the korbanot, and the har all in one ceremony. So too, in this event, we're having all in one ceremony. We can suggest that the nature of accepting the brit at Har Sinai in many ways comes to, I guess, maybe progress or go, or is the brit of Eretz Yisrael. That, number one, this time the Jews are on the mountain. Number two, Bnei Yisrael is on the mountain, meaning as opposed to being under the mountain and forced to do it. They take an active role in accepting the brachot and the klalot. And most importantly, as opposed to being somewhere in a nameless and timeless place in the middle of the desert, now they're in the center of Eretz Yisrael in Shechem. And that means, just like Avram went into the country in Shechem, and so to Am Yisrael, they're coming into the gateway to the country in the center. Like B'Dam B'Tarim, we have a covenant that is done in the middle. So too here we have a covenant that's coming in the middle in the nature of the acceptance. And we can hope and pray that the place where the covenant and the entry to Eretz Yisrael began in Shechem, Har Grizim, Har Eival, which unfortunately had such tragic events in last month, even last week. And we can hope and pray that these places will be able to perpetuate the ideals that were imprinted in those areas in this acceptance of the Brit, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, at Har Grizim, Har Eival, and the Mizbeach at Har Eival. Shabbat Shalom.